So this video is going to be all about the first derivative test, and I'm going to show you how it can be used to find two different things about a function. The first being intervals of increasing and decreasing, and the second being local minimums and maximums. So there's some key information that we need to know about the first derivative test. When it comes to our intervals, wherever the first derivative is greater than 0 or positive, our original function is increasing. And whenever our first derivative is less than 0 or negative, our original function is decreasing. Now, the information we need to know about minimums and maximums is that where the original function switches from increasing to decreasing, we have a local maximum, and where our function switches from decreasing to increasing, we have a local minimum. So in order to show you all of this, I'm going to go through an example because there are a lot of steps to this test. So if we have the original function 7x squared minus 3x plus 12, our first step is to take the derivative of this function, which with the power rule we know to be 14x minus 3. Our second step is to set this derivative equal to 0 and solve for x. When we do this, we find that x is equal to 3 over 14. That means this value is our critical point. Our third step is to set up intervals using the domain of the original function and our critical point. So since our function is a polynomial, we know the domain is negative infinity to infinity. That means our intervals will be negative infinity to 3 over 14 and 3 over 14 to positive infinity. Our fourth step is to evaluate the first derivative using numbers that fall into each of these intervals. So for this first interval, I'm going to use -1, and for the second interval, I'm going to use +1. When we evaluate these, we find that the first derivative, when you plug in -1, is equal to -17, and when you plug in 1, you get 11. Now, we don't really care about the numbers, but we do care about the signs. So the first derivative is less than 0 on this first interval, and the first derivative is greater than 0 on this interval. That means that our original function is decreasing on our first interval, and our original function is increasing on our second interval. So now that we have our intervals, we want to find out what's going on with 3 over 14, our critical point. So because our function goes from decreasing to increasing, we know that 3 over 14 is a local minimum. Now we can check these results by drawing the graph of this function. So 7x squared minus 3x plus 12 is going to end up being a parabola that is shifted up and to the right. We know that this point is going to be our 3 over 14. And if we look at this graph from left to right, we do in fact see that from negative infinity to 3 over 14, our function is decreasing, and from 3 over 14 to infinity, our function is increasing. That makes 3 over 14 our local minimum. So we can write out our results. And that is the first derivative test.